Hi, this is Donna, West Houston, Texas realtor. We're going to talk about some of the things that are going on because this weekend I had so many questions, so many assumptions and ideas about what's happening in July and the new rules and laws. The only two things that are really happening is that buyers and buyers agents need to have a signed agreement when showing homes. The other one is the MLS is no longer going to be showing what the seller pays the buyer's agent. That's the key thing there, is they're not going to know. So they're going to have to call the listing agent every time they want to show a house and ask what and if the seller is paying the buyer's agent. And then they will decide between the buyer's agent and the buyer whether or not they want to view the home or go to the next one based on that information, or view the home and if they like it, try to renegotiate as part of the offer to have the buyer's agent paid. If the seller's not paying the buyer's agent, the listing agent in Texas, if they brought in a buyer, they would have to do an intermediary, and that would have to be agreed upon by all parties, which means the listing agent can negotiate to be paid for doing the work as what the buyer's agent would be doing for the buyers to get to closing day. And I had a lot of questions this weekend that sellers were like, I'm waiting to sell my home in July because then I don't have to pay the buyer's agent anymore. This is not true. You have never had to pay the buyer's agent. The commissions have always been negotiable. None of that's changing. None of that's changing. So you don't have to pay the buyer's agent now. The question is, why do sellers pay the listing agent and the buyer's agent? Well, they're paying to bring in the buyer, have a buyer's agent negotiate on the buyer's behalf, and to do all the paperwork to get that property closed to purchase your house. It is so important to have two people representing each side to get the deal closed, because it's not just paperwork. There is so many complicated things that happen and go on throughout a transaction to get to closing day. It's crazy. Everything's different. Like, you need somebody representing a buyer. You don't have to. A lot of times it is just highly recommended that you have the buyer's agent and you have the listing agent, because they can represent each other, they can negotiate on behalf of each other, and they can deal with all the stuff separately with them and you with you. And as a seller, I'm thinking, why should I pay for that? Well, you don't have to. But just be aware that every time a buyer's agent calls your listing and it says you're not paying them anything, that buyer's agent that already has an agreement with the buyer whether or not to view homes based on what they've agreed that they want. If you're not paying anything and that buyer's agent is not going to get paid by the buyer, they can see the house and then they're still going to come and ask for some pay for the buyer's agent. The other thing that they will do is they will walk away. They will not look at the house. They will not negotiate. And people are like, that's rude. You can't do that. Well, no, it's a negotiation. It's business. Buyer's agent works with the buyer and they have an agreement signed based on negotiated pay, and same with the listing and the listing agent. And everything's negotiable at every step and every phase. And it always has been. So, yeah, the quiet part's out loud. And the one thing is that since everybody's going to be having, all the buyer's agents are going to be asking the listing agent before they go to see a house, how much the listing agent is paying the buyer's agent, if anything, then the seller is going to have a better quantifiable idea, if they're not paying the buyer anything, of how many people are calling to find out that they're not paying them and not showing up to even view the house. That's it. You'll find out, and then maybe the house sells or it doesn't sell based on factors. A seller can always do for sale by owner. If they don't want to pay people, the sellers can do for sale by owner. The listing agent doesn't have to list the house if you only want to pay the listing agent and don't want to pay the buyer's agent. Remember, all this stuff is negotiable. Like when you are interviewing an agent, a real estate agent, whether it's a buyer's agent or for listing, you're like, I'm negotiating and I'm interviewing them. It's the opposite too. It goes both ways. They're interviewing you and they're negotiating with you.